Unmuted Mark
Yes.
and Sarah.
Sarah's unmuted, yeah.
Hello, hi everyone. We're just waiting for people just to join us, and then we'll be making a start. If you are in, and if you're able to find the chat icon at the bottom of the screen, you may want to just add your details in terms of your name and institution into the chat window, just so that we can share who's joining us today. That would be brilliant. Just wait. We might hear a few more people joining us, but we can probably just get going. And great, thank you for adding those comments. Great to see everyone with us. Right, so very, very warm welcome to our Digital Experience Insights webinar today. As you've probably seen, it's going to be a triple act today, where we're going to take turns in just sharing sort of updates around particular aspects relating to running Digital Experience Insights. Just to say that we are recording the webinar, so we will be sharing the link to the webinar post-event. We will also be sharing the slides, so we will be hosting those on our blog, and we'll be emailing out the links to those probably tomorrow or late this afternoon. Just also to say that the purpose of today is, if we just move on to the next slide, Mark.
Sorry. Yeah.
The purpose of today as well is also just to introduce those that are new to Insights to the service, but also to give a little bit more background around how to get started with Insights for those that are currently working with us on the Insights survey. So I just thought it would be useful, and you will hear from all of us, certainly from three of us, during today's webinar, but just to introduce the team. The Digital Insights team has grown, and if you haven't met us all before, I'm Sarah Knight. I'm the service owner, and I'm sort of work within the Futures team within Jisc as Head of Change for Student Experience. And today I'm joined by Ruth Drysdale, who again is a member of our Student Experience team and is also Service Manager for our Digital Experience Insight service. Likewise, we've got Mark with us today, and Mark is our new member of the team. Mark, not so new now, but joined us in September and is our Senior Analyst. So Mark is the person who you will have a lot of contact with once you get started with running your surveys, as Mark can offer support and expertise around the running of the surveys, and of course later when you're looking at the analysis side as well. Today, we've also on the screen, we have Claire Killen, who is our content manager for our Digital Experience Insights website, and has, some of you may have been working with her recently around the production of case studies. So Claire at the moment is writing out stories in terms of how institutions are making use and getting value from the Insights service. We can just go back to the previous slide, Mark, thank you. We've got Darren on the screen there as well, who is our customer support officer, and you will have had sort of emails from Darren in relation to the signing up to the service, and also Darren is our online surveys, or what used to be called Boss Expert. So Darren is a very important member of our team in terms of providing us with that expertise. Lola Hare is our contact from our market research team within Jisc, and also works very closely with us on the designing of the survey questions and the looking again at supporting the analysis, and is also involved in working with us on development of some new question sets that we'll say a little bit more about as we go through the webinar. So on to the next screen, Mark, please. So a little bit of background around what we're going to be doing in today's webinar. So I'm going to, as I've been doing, give you a background to the service, and for those that perhaps are new to it, a little bit of history in relation to where the service originates from. Ruth is going to give some institutional insights and some tips around how to get the most benefit from your insight surveys. And this is very much drawn from the experience we've had of working with institutions, over 100 institutions over the past 3 years, around what are the critical success factors in ensuring that you do get good student and staff engagement around the process. And some valuable sort of tips in terms of, setting up and establishing what needs to be in place in order to maximise the value from the surveys. Mark is going to talk through the actual process of getting started with insights, and just highlighting again the wealth of documentation and guidance that we have available. We have got a new service website that I'm hoping you've had a look at, and we'll just be pointing you to some of the valuable guidance that is available to really sort of walk you through step by step, if that's needed, in getting your surveys up and running. Ruth is going to follow on with that with some updates around new developments, which are quite exciting new developments around the service and opportunities to get involved with those. And then we'll close really just in terms of next steps and some sort of follow-on sort of actions and dates. So if we move on to our next slide, Mark. And the next slide again, please. So we're often asked within the team around, what is the value of running digital experience insights, or why would you use digital experience insights? What's it going to do for me in my institution? And part of the rationale for the service very much originated from IT directors coming to Jisc back in 2013 and saying to us, we are investing huge sums of money into our IT infrastructure. We know from a recent AOC survey last year for colleges, for example, that an average college will spend around £900,000 a year on its IT infrastructure. And the IT directors, through the groups of UCISA, through Rudget, RL UK, and also Scholar in terms of the library staff, came to Jisc and said, how do we know that the investment that our institutions are investing in this area is actually in the right places and students and staff are making the better use of technology? And hence our work around digital student projects started. And that was originally through a series of interviews, focus group work with staff and students across the UK and across all the education sectors. And what came through very strongly from that is that we needed to have a mechanism or a way in which institutions could gather evidence to say, this is why the investment in these areas is important to us. This is how our students and staff are using technology. These are the areas we know that are working well. These are the areas where perhaps we're not working as well. So Insights really does provide a very important evidence base to feed back into discussions around the digital environment and the investment that is being made. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Mark. But in addition, I think one of the things that's coming through so strongly across further and higher education is that IT teams or TAL teams cannot develop their digital environment in isolation. That if we want to have a meaningful digital experience for our staff and students, we need them to be partners in that development. And we really need to be seeing students and staff engaged with discussions around the digital environment. And again, Insights provides a mechanism and a process in which those views can be gathered. Further work can be done in terms of feeding back on the views that are being collated, and further work can be done to actually co-develop some of the areas and some of the follow-on activities that arise from the data that you've collected. And importantly, all of this is brought together through your institutional digital strategy. We're seeing more and more universities and colleges having a holistic strategy that goes across learning and teaching, research, and other activities that those educational environments or education institutions are involved with. And absolutely essential that through the development of that strategy and the ongoing review, that there is evidence that can be fed back into the review of that strategy to know how digital is being used in an institution across all areas, and all the stakeholders across the university or college have sort of ownership of that. It no longer is the case that digital only sits with those that are supporting TEL. or e-learning, or whatever the terms that we've used in the past to refer to that. So moving on to the next slide, Mark. So really important for us to actually know how our students and staff are using the environment that they're working within, and technology plays an important part of that. But importantly, a growing need to know how we compare with others. And through the online surveys tool that we're using to run insights, we are able to offer that benchmarking data back. And that has also been a really powerful tool for staff to elicit more engagement from their senior managers. Unfortunately, although it's not something that we all agree with, but the influence of comparisons with other institutions are quite strong motivators for senior leaders. So that, I think, plays an important role in the importance of the data that you get back. So moving on to the next slide. So I think what we're saying here is that although Insights at the heart of it does have survey tools within it and questions that you're able to ask your staff and students, it's more than a survey. And what we are saying here is that it really is about an engagement process for your staff and students so you can co-develop your digital environment. Moving on to the next slide, Mark. What we'd like to do now is just to get a feel, and while I've been talking, I know we've had quite a number of people that have been joining and also making comments in the chat window. So what I'd like to do now is just pause for a moment and just ask our participants today, who is here that has been using the Digital Experience Insights, or Tracker as it was previously known, and who has perhaps never participated in using Insights or Tracker to date. So Mark is going to launch a survey, a poll, and if we could ask you to select the option, you will see a voting button that you're able to select, and if we can just see how those are looking. Great. Okay, that's really interesting. We won't see many respondents necessarily for the staff version of what was in Tracker. We did a very small scale pilot last year, which we'll be able to share some information on today. But great to see that we have, we have got some participants, there who've run both staff and students, so apologies. And yes, great that people have been following these developments in the community and in the event.
Sorry, but I'm busy. Lie down.
Great. Okay.
Can you view that? Can you view that? Can you see the results, Sarah? Can everyone else see the results? Okay.
Can everyone see the results?
We can see them. Thanks, Mark.
Move on. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So if we go back to what is our Digital Experience Insights, so we have got at its core a set of tried and tested questions that have been developed over the past 3 years and extensively tested with staff and students across the 100 organisations that we've been working with. We've been very fortunate over those 3 years to have the input from Helen Beetham and Tabitha Newman, who have been very closely involved with the development of this work. And of course, the work that Helen has done around learner experience sort of underpins a lot of the ethos around this project. So the question sets that we have now are for staff and for students, and we also have our online learners question set, which is available for institutions to use. And of course, for those as well, that's really important for us to also gather and the experiences of learners that are learning offsite, that are learners that their only contact with institutions is through that online experience. And from previous research that we've done in this space, we know that that is an area that is currently under-researched, both internationally, nationally, and at sort of a local level as well. The questions as well, just to say, have also been translated into Welsh. So for those that are from Wales, you're able to access Welsh versions of the question set. We, of course, have got the FE and HE question sets available, and those are very much tailored to our different audiences. So we have the closed questions that are benchmarked. We obviously have the qualitative analysis that can be done from the open questions, which I think are really insightful in terms of looking at what students are writing down in their replies to, you know, what one thing can better support your digital experience, or, you know, what one app is your, you know, the one that you are finding most effective for your learning. And we've got some great word clouds on those that we've pulled out from last year's analysis. Looking also able to, looking also able to customize further questions as well at a local level. And Mark was saying a bit more about that in his section. So what I was saying is that this is definitely a process supported, supports student and staff engagement, and very much our guidance around the use of the surveys is couched within that, in terms of looking at who you need to engage in the institution, where the data is going, where the analysis will be fed back to in terms of stakeholders. And with any you know, assessment, it's always good practice to close that loop, and, you know, you said we did, and to feed that back to our staff and students. But all our work with students are really interested in feeding their views back in relation to digital, and often have, you know, some great stories and some great ideas to share as follow-on, you know, if you are looking at doing some further focus groups around this. We've got a community of practice, which you know, you're part of, or those that are not running Insights are still able to join, and that brings us together for face-to-face meetings, but also has the online webinars as we're doing today. And importantly, I think the process gives you that holistic view. So looking across our staff and students' experiences, we're able to validate and cross-reference some of the findings. And we're going to say more about the new pilots that are coming on stream this year later on. So next slide, Mark. So that sort of diagram there is sort of a representation really of the process, and Ruth will be saying a little bit more about the inner circle in a moment, in terms of the process institutions will go through in terms of planning for the rollout of the surveys, looking at how we collect data, monitoring it, looking at the analysis, and then looking at what improvements can be made and how that feeds into other areas within the institution. The outer purple ring around there is sort of what we do as sort of the Insights team. So we are, you know, supporting you with guidance. There is that access to the support, both for our email support, you know, as needed, also the guidance documents that we'll be referring to. There's also the analysis that we do at a national level in terms of bringing together all that data, which is very much informed by expert panels from the community to ensure that what we are producing has meaningful recommendations, not just at local level, but at national level, and bringing together, of course, examples of case studies of how institutions are developing their digital environment through the knowledge that they've gained through participating in the service. So moving on to the next slide, Mark. So very quickly, I'm not going to dwell on these, but just a reminder that we have published 3 reports this year in relation to the outcomes from our 2018-2017 data that we collected. Our student report, it is there, and the links are there. You'll be able to follow those up when we circulate the reports slides post-webinar. And if we move on to the next slide, Mark. The Staff Insights report, which is our small-scale pilot, some of you may have been involved in, was published in November and makes very, very interesting reading, particularly in the areas around professional development for staff, their motivation in relation to digital, and the support in the areas that, you know, they are highlighting. Particularly, you know, the ones that are coming to the fore as sort of key areas of concern, I think, across the sector in relation to accessibility and inclusion, data protection, the issues around digital well-being. So really recommend you having a look through that report if you haven't done already. And lastly, we are about to publish this week, it should be going live shortly, the insights from our Australian and New Zealand pilots, with some quite significant numbers of students that responded, and really interesting there to see the differences between our UK experience and our Australian New Zealand experience of students. You've seen on the slide, I've just sort of highlighted that there are a lot of similarities, but also some really interesting differences, and those are sort of highlighted and expanded on in the report as well. So a really sort of strong suite of reports there. And I'm hoping at this point, Mark, we might be able to bring up our second poll, just to get some feedback from you. So what we'd be interested in, for those of you that have had a chance to look at the reports, we'd really like to know whether you have found these reports of use. A huge amount of work goes into them, and it's always useful to know if anyone is actually using them and how they're using them, because that's really informing us in terms of our synthesis for this year. And if you haven't, hopefully there's some prompts there to have a look at those and see, if you can gain some value from them. That's really interesting. One of the things that we're currently sort of discussing as well is we have, of course, some summary that we did, an at-a-glance summary for our student report, and we will obviously look to do a similar sort of at-a-glance summary, but for this year's data analysis, but possibly also separate out FE and HE. So there is sort of an FE view and an HE view within those. Thank you, that's really great. Thank you for responding to those. That's really useful. Mark, are we able to, thank you, moving on to the next slide, great. So my last slide is just to say that the reports are one way of sharing data at a national level, and just to say that the data that we have shared nationally has certainly been fed into government departments, we've fed it into DFE, with the hope, that this might inform, their direction of travel and give them a better understanding of the issues that, that our sectors are facing. In addition, though, just to sort of whet your appetite, we have also got some other outputs that are expected in the next month or so. One is around the factor analysis, so exploring the student digital experience and looking at the correlation between the findings between staff, student, organisational factors, and that's a report from Tabitha Newman, and some really valuable sort of data in there around, what constitutes an effective digital student experience. So I definitely recommend having a look at that when that's published. But equally, we're trying to also break down the outcomes in other ways. So looking at how we can put together a short, succinct briefing paper for FE and HE leaders, for example, on enabling an excellent student digital experience. So rather than putting out what we think what are the good factors that make up a student digital experience, what we're able to do now is actually use the data and findings from the reports and to say this is the evidence that shows this is what we mean by an excellent student digital experience. We've also done some updates working with NUS around the benchmarking tool. So that's the Jisc NUS Student Experience Benchmarking Tool, and that will also be available from the site in the next month or so. And lastly as well, looking at to support teaching staff. So thinking about our practice, how do we design in digital learning activities that are going to ensure that students are active, engaged, and really getting the most out of technology. So all of that will be available shortly. And that's available from the URL on that screen. So I'm going to pause there and I'm going to hand over the mic to Ruth. But I just wanted to pause to make sure if there were any questions, you had the opportunity of either asking those in the chat window or also to, if anyone did want to take the microphone, to ask the questions.
Yeah.
I'll pause there.
Mark, do you want to unmute everybody to see whether they want to ask, or just put them in the chat if you are on mute?
All unmuted now.
Thank you, Mark. So if there are any questions or any comments anyone would like to raise, please do just take the microphone. I know we've got some lots of comments in the chat window that I'm just sort of working through as well. Okay.
Hi. Will there be any option, because I've looked at, obviously this is the first time that we're doing, sorry, I've just got people coming in the office. This is the first time that we've been able to do the staff survey alongside the student survey. will you be reporting back any benchmarking
Yes.
between those two surveys? Because that's what we're really interested. This was our third year for the students, but the first year for the staff survey.
So a staff survey will have its same set of benchmarking data as you've had for students.
Yeah, so we'll be able to benchmark our students against our staff response.
Mark, do you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, you'll be able to benchmark your staff scores against the sort of the overall national score for the survey, and you'll be able to do it against the student one as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, you will hold the data for your staff and your students, so you would be able to compare across where relevant the questions. Then between the two.
Okay.
We're still talking, but I presume we would want to look into, when we're producing our national reports, comparisons between the two nationally as well. That's going to be very useful, like we did last time.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Do you want to mute again and move on, or
move on to Ruth?
So Ruth, you need to unmute.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much. So Mark, do you want to move on to the next slide? So I think feedback from talking to institutions that have run the student survey, as Keely mentioned just now, over the past 3 years, we've got several case studies on our website. But generally, what most people have found was beneficial was to think running the survey as a project, because sometimes I think people think running a survey is just about launching the survey and getting responses, and they don't always necessarily think through the full cycle at the beginning of the process. And so we're responding to feedback from people that they would welcome this kind of information. So last year we produced this diagram of the 4 quadrants of a survey life cycle. And in the first quadrant, where you plan, because I'm sure you're all familiar with projects and surveys, so I might be teaching grandmas to suck eggs here, but I think it's still worth going through for some of the new people. But generally, it's really good to establish who is your senior champion behind the survey. So who is going to help promote it within an organisation? And then usually they have a project team below them. So assuming that yourselves, you might be the sort of main manager that is going to run the whole survey. So you might be one person covering all these roles. But we can talk about the different tasks in a minute, but it's in order to get the impact of the data, it's good to have a working group with representatives from across your organisation, because several different stakeholder groups are going to find it really useful to use the data that comes out of the survey. So as we've mentioned, it's really good to get student union engaged at the beginning, so they can help promote it with students, but also they can help use the data and feedback to students what it is that you've done with their responses. So as well as student union, IT are obviously another key stakeholder with the use of the data at the end of the survey, and library and academics. So think about how you're going to get these stakeholders engaged. In terms of the governance of running the survey, is there already existing structures and committees that you can use to tap into rather than creating your own? So several institutions have a student experience steering group or working group or something like that. So are they aware of you running this survey? Would they be interested in receiving the outputs from your survey? Once you've started to establish who are the stakeholders, then create a communication plan. How are you going to work with them and get them to engage with you in promoting the survey, and as I mentioned, using the data that comes out of it? You might also need to have a little bit of budget if you want to offer prizes to either students or staff if you're running the staff survey as well. And then there's the practical side of actually running the survey then. So you need to consider when are you going to open and close them. If you're running both staff and student, are they going to be at the same time or different times? And then are you going to add your own local questions? So that's, once you've sort of thought all those things through in your planning stage, you can then start moving into actually running the survey. So there I've got, you can design your own local questions. These won't be benchmarked though, because it's only you that it's going to ask it, not the other organisations. So, but they can be very useful if you want to do any baselining. So if you run the survey year on year, you can see how things change over time. And then you'll need somebody to set it up in BOS and launch it and monitor responses, because you can see responses real time. So if you're running it for 2 or 3 weeks, you might look at responses every few days to see if there's any activity that you could suddenly put in there to increase your response rate. But Mark has produced lots of really useful guidance on a website about this, and please do get in contact with him if you'd like any further information. So then once you've closed the survey, we get into the analysis side, and as we've mentioned, there's lots of things there that you can do yourself within the BOS tool or within other tools. Mark and Darren are here to help, so if you've got any questions, please do ask them. And as we've mentioned, we've got the community of practice, so you can ask each other, because it's very much about collaboration in running the surveys and helping each other analyse it and get the most out of it. And then in section 4, it's about how do you act on the insights you've gathered from the data. How are you going to use that to enhance the student digital experience, either directly for students or indirectly through the teaching staff and the other professional support staff that support students? Because that is the purpose of gathering all the data after all. So that's the way we've described the survey life cycle and the activities and things you have to consider as you go around that loop. So Mark, if you'd like to move to the next slide. There you can see the slide, the diagram that Sarah has already shared, and the plan, collect data, analyze data, improve are the 4 stages that I've gone through in a bit more depth. So that's really what you guys are doing within your organisation. And then the outer circle, the outer deep purple, is the information, support and guidance and activities that Jisc does with you all in order to support you in going through that cycle. And there, as you can see, as Sarah's mentioned, we produce national benchmarking reports for external agencies as well as yourselves. So that's me over. So has anybody got any questions about actually running the survey and how best to do it in order to get the most benefit?
Okay, everyone's unmuted. If anyone has any questions. Or in the chat room, any questions?
Hi, it's Anya from the Aberystwyth University.
Hi there.
Hiya. We are just running our survey at the moment, and there is one thing that we thought maybe we'll mention and feedback. So we have the prize draw, and we are very grateful that this year you also released a separate survey for the prize draw.
Sure.
The one issue that we came across is that some students unfortunately fill only the prize draw survey.
Okay.
So there is around 20 more responses that we have in the prize draw survey than in the main survey. So we just thought maybe that's something to keep in mind, you know, for future considerations. But generally is going very well. And yeah, we look forward to see our results. Thank you very much for this webinar.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, it's interesting about the prize draw. They take their way through it, and then, you know, but thanks for the feedback about it. Think about it.
Yeah.
Thank
Some
you.
very enterprising students there. Okay.
Could I ask a specific question about the customizable questions, Mark?
Yeah, go for it, of course. I'll talk a little bit about it in my next bit, but let's talk a bit now.
Well, my main question is, are there customizable questions? Is it a separate section within the survey as a whole, or can you customize questions within sections within the template of the survey?
No, the issue is though is that we need to sort of merge the surveys together, obviously, to do the benchmark.
Understand.
So we put it all together, and the customizable ones come at the end, so they can drop off when we sort of bunch it all together. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that does. The other thing is, obviously, Met, we're a really big institution, and one of the things that we would like to do is to distinguish between responses from different parts of the university, so from different faculties. Is that the sort of thing that the customizable section can be used for, or is there any other mechanism for doing that kind of thing?
That's where the customizable, because obviously we don't know, different universities have different setups, department, faculty, so we have to leave that as an open one. So one of the questions could be, you know, faculty, department, but then you might have an extra question you might want to ask online, you know, or a question specific to your university. But I would say that's one of the main ones, obviously, because you are going to want to look at it, your results broken down by the local area.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay,
then. Thanks, Rod. There's a question coming from Elizabeth, a quick one about the benchmarking data. When does this become available during the cycle? When the survey is closed, maybe Sarah or Ruth can come in here. I think it was available, was it a few weeks afterwards?
So we have our student survey. So our surveys run in annual cycles, partly so that we can do the benchmarking and the national analysis. You have access to your own local data throughout that process as soon as you start opening your surveys up. But the actual benchmarking data comes, we can only issue the benchmarking data when all the surveys close. So we close the student one for this year on the 30th of April. We close the staff one on the 30th of June. And a week later, you will then have an alert from us to say that the benchmarking data for your sector is now available for the staff and for the students. So you would then have access to that data.
Thanks, Sarah. Two other questions come in. One from Elaine is, are we breaking it down by mission group? It's not a question asked in the survey. I mean, obviously, once we've got a list of institutions, we can identify what mission groups they're in.
Yes, and we did do some of that analysis for our 2018 survey. And it really also depends on the numbers of institutions that we get in the different mission groups. So obviously benchmarking is very reliant on having, you know, the numbers of institutions in those groups in order to make the benchmarking data significant. So if we have sufficient numbers, we will certainly be doing that again this year. But yes, we could do that.
And there's one last one, thanks Sarah, from Laura, about putting it at the beginning, the faculty question. The reason we don't is because obviously each university has their own faculty departments, and for the survey to be benchmarked, every question and response has to be exactly the same. So because it's a very personal question, we put it at the end as an option. Okay, any other questions before I move on? Okay, hold on a sec. Mute all. So on to my section then. Okay, so it's the insights process and a quick guide to getting started and running your project. So some of you have already started, as we saw from the poll. Some of you are in the process of starting, so some of it will be relevant to some of you, some won't. So for people who are thinking about signing up, we want to show you the steps of actually getting involved and how easy it is, and to take you through step by step. So with this guide here, the first one you can see is submitting your expression of interest online. Just to let you know, as well as this recording, we will make the actual presentation available to you. So when you click on this online here, it will take you through, so you can go straight into the system and do an expression of interest. Once we receive this, Darren will send out a quote for the cost, sign up forms and terms and conditions, so you can have a look at these, and again come back to us if you have any questions questions at all. When you've completed that, you can send that back to us in a purchase order if applicable. We then send you a getting started survey. So we just want to know a bit about you. Obviously, importantly, which surveys do you want to sign up to and to be made available, but also a little bit of background information about your institution and your digital experience. So what we can do is get more of an idea about you as an institution. And also when we're looking at the results, we can look at different responses and compare to the actual survey responses as well. So it makes the data a lot more richer. So when you send the survey form, get back to us, you're ready to go. So we can then, within Jisc online surveys, we will then make the master copies available for you, and all the guidance explains how you make copies of the masters, so you have your own individual copy. Again, there's a link here, there's a link on the slide coming up, tells you where all the guidance is, and I really strongly encourage you to read this. It's, there's a lot there, but it's really, really useful. And from that, literally, you can then copy, customize, and you're ready to launch the surveys. And the last stage then really, of course, is closing the surveys, which is the 30th of April for students and the 28th of June for staff. And then, as we said before, the benchmarking data then is available shortly after. So it seems like a big project, but the steps to get going are actually quite simple. So some of this goes over what Ruth said, and I might have a slightly different angle here, but this is a quick guide. So really, the bits that appear to maybe it will take a long time don't. So getting the survey ready, launching, they are very, very easy. The thing that takes time is actually thinking about project management, which Ruth was talking about. So actually thinking about who's going to be involved with this project, getting a steering group together, thinking about engagement, thinking about when the results come out, who the results going to go to, who you need to always work with your senior management to say these beforehand, these are the results, how are we going to act upon them, rather than waiting for the results to come out. So there's a lot of non-technical, I suppose, speaking to people behind the scenes. So it's a bit like an iceberg. The actual survey part is not the hard part. The more difficult part is the engagement of obviously the response rate, but also the senior people. So whatever comes out of these surveys, the actual real change can be made. So let's go through the steps. We talked about getting signed up. So then you can log into Jisc Online Surveys, and you have full support of the Jisc Online Surveys team and Darren, who can help you in any way possible with any technical questions. You can make the copies of the questions that you require, sorry, the surveys you require. Then we talked about customizing the additional questions if you wish to. So you've got your main survey. You may not want to add any more customizable questions, but the options there. We generally say no more than 3 questions, because if you start adding a lot of extra ones, you're going to end up with survey fatigue, and your response rate will drop off very quickly. People won't get to the end. So obviously you can use these to split up by location, by faculty, by department, or you may have a particular question or questions you want to ask your institution, where you can add them here. Again, the guidance goes into how you can add the questions within Jisc Online Surveys, and again, Darren's there to offer advice, and so am I if you have any trouble doing this. So quite a big part, of course, is the engagement strategy with students to ensure the high response rate. So you want to do the engagement beforehand, letting people know that it's actually coming up, and thinking about poster campaigns, thinking about how you're actually going to distribute the survey as well. So you're thinking about, is an email going to go out on posters? Importantly, explain to people why they should take part. What's in it for them? Why, what will come out of this? That's the key thing for the engagement. And again, in the guidance, then there's a whole range of ideas there what to do. And basically over the years and stuff, we've spoken to so many institutions about what they've done, what's worked and what hadn't worked, and we've actually included this in the guidance itself. So you can pick up on best practice, not just from us, but from universities who've done it in the past, and how it's worked for them. So then you want to decide, go back again, who you want to survey. So do you want to do all staff, or do you want to do all students? I mean, most people will do a survey of the whole student or staff body. You may want to actually do a sample. So the key thing here is the sample actually is representative of the wider population you're looking at. And if you're doing a sample, you do really need to get close to 100%. So you really want to target on this particular sample. On the other hand, you may want to say, actually, we want to survey all of our students. to have everyone to have a chance and have a say as well. And the key thing here, obviously, is you want to raise your response rate. And the response rate is important, but what's more important is that you can check that the survey is actually representative. So obviously you want a decent response rate, but actually even more important is the survey is representative or closely representative of the population you're looking at. And if it is slightly skewed, being upfront in the analysis on the results to explain this. So the final thing then is like a checklist then to look at your survey to make sure it's ready to launch. And then it is simply pressing a button within Jisc online surveys, and it'll give you a checklist saying, have you checked X, Y, and Z before you actually go? So as Ruth said before, you can monitor the survey response rates and send reminders to people to complete. So there's two ways. Most people send out a general URL for people to complete the survey. You can actually load your emails addresses into the Jisc online survey system, so you can then see who has and who hasn't responded, not necessarily what the people responded because of confidentiality. So you could then target people to say, you know, you've got 1 week left, or you've got so many days left to complete the survey, and X many people in your area have already completed it. So creating almost like a bit of competition as such between areas if you want. So then you have the survey closed, and it's very simple. You can download the data from the survey tool into Excel, or if you're more statistically minded, you can download it into SPSS and download the benchmark results as well, so to start playing with. Then you can carry out the analysis, so reviewing the data and the charts for key messages. And as we were saying in the chat room with Rod, I'm in the process of creating an Excel and PowerPoint template. So some of the key questions, when you get your results, you'll be able to enter those into the Excel spreadsheet, and it will produce graphs for you, which you can then use in the PowerPoint presentation. It's worth thinking beforehand here as well, is who in your institution can help you with the analysis. So I know in universities, maybe less so in FE, there's planning functions where there may be data people there may be a business intelligence function. So you may want to think beforehand within your university or amongst the wider staff who can help you or sort of share the workload out as well. I mean, it's not high level statistical analysis, but just someone who can, you know, help you get through it. Or maybe you're very good with data yourself as well. So the key thing, of course, is to report and communicate. So you want to produce reports, and you want to present your findings to your staff and students, and also the key stakeholders, and also to let them know that what's come out and what actions are going to be taken. But there may be results in there that you find there isn't much you can do, but at least being upfront and giving a reason why something can't be done, or not done straight away at least, and what you will do. So it's kind of like along the lines of saying, you know, you said, we do. And of course, having that senior group of stakeholders on board to agree to that is crucial as well. So, I mean, this in a sense is quite a quick guide, as I said. There's a URL link on here. Again, this will be shared, which gives you full details, and there's separate different documents within there, and you can sort of work your way through, and that'll give you a wealth of information. But if you do have any other questions, you know, do come back to me, or if it's about Jisc online surveys, come back to Darren, or, you know, or even the wider team. If there's a question for the wider team, it can be passed through me, and I can speak to Sarah or Ruth or anyone else. So any questions? I'll do an unmute. So unmuted now. So any questions?
I haven't picked up any in the chat as we've been going through that, Mark.
Okay.
But let's just see if anyone has got some questions they would like to ask.
So it's more of a technical one, maybe one you want to think about a bit first, and then maybe come back to me and drop us an email. If you just send the email via Digital Insights address.
Yeah. I think because we're all mindful that this is a lot of information, especially for new people to take on board. But as we've said, there's lots of people around to help you. So please don't sit there and feel like you're in it alone. There are plenty of people that can give you lots of good examples. And as we've mentioned, the case studies on the website, but also you can either drop us an email or pick up a phone and speak to us, and we can point you in the good directions of what others have done.
I think just to say, obviously, this is a whistle-stop tour as such. So, you know, it's for people who want to get started quickly. So different people have different approaches, but obviously some of you have launched already. So, I mean, the people have launched their surveys, have you had any challenges, and how are you engaging with staff and students? Is there anything quickly you want to share with us?
I think we have had lots of questions from one signing up for the staff survey, because obviously last year was the pilot, so not many institutions have tried running it with staff survey, a general staff survey. Ones last year found that they got fantastic response rates. Staff were really up for giving their opinion of the digital environment. So it'd be interesting to know if people have got ideas about how to engage staff, because obviously with students, you've got student union, they're an obvious stakeholder to get engaged, but are people using their HR department or systems, or existing sort of management structures or committee structures to promote staff? Or
staff trade unions or staff representative bodies as well?
We've
got a question from Keeley, is it?
Yeah, Keeley, yeah. I'm from an FE college. So for the previous 2 years, we've been really lucky that we've been able to go into the tutorial sessions, which are always in a classroom. And we've been welcomed in. So we just took 10 minutes of every tutorial. So we were able to get all the students to sign up and do the survey then. This year, the tutorials are all online, and luckily we manage all the online tutorials. So again, they won't be able to get away from us. And the staff we've spoken to Human Resources and our CPD department, and it will be part of the CPD day in February. So again, we're getting that input, so we're quite lucky. But I think that is because the fact that we have been doing it over the last couple of years, so there is an awareness that this survey has been running for our learners, and so to get the staff involved should be really interesting.
That's really valuable as well, Keely, because I think one of the things that's come through from all our research is that students and staff need to know why they're doing it and what benefit will be. And to be able to introduce it and have a little bit of context makes it far more meaningful, and hopefully you get better buy-in from students and staff in doing that.
And we have been able to share what we have been able to do following the surveys. We had the first year, it was all about we wanted the Chrome browser. So the second year they got the Chrome browser. There was a lot of discussion about wanting to submit assignments online. So we were able to put that forward. So we had clear changes that have been put in place following the survey. So yes, it's quite good.
That's brilliant. Lovely examples there, Keely. Do you mind sharing which college you're from?
Petrock. So we're in Devon, so we're North Devon and East Devon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. A quick question from Elizabeth about response rates and confidence intervals. The guidance does go in there about the size of your population and what size of sample you're looking at. I can't remember offhand what it is for 30,000, but what I'll say is that obviously you've got a very big institution there, and the larger your population size, the smaller the percentage of your total population you need as a sample. So I can send you an email on that guidance, and I can follow up with any other questions you have about that as well, Elizabeth, if that's okay. Okay, should we move on?
One last point from I just wanted to make that, as I said, there's a lot of information and support and ideas out there, and some of you might feel a little overwhelmed by it. But I think some of the institutions have just sort of said sometimes you just need to get on and dip your toe in and get it going, and then things will happen. But if you can, take at least a lightweight approach to your project management, and that will set the scene and get things off to a really good start.
Ruth, did you want to just say, because something we were discussing internally in the team was, looking at if, what would sort of be the time frame from, getting the surveys through to you to launching to closing. And I think in the team we were saying, well, you could probably do that within a 6-week window, provided you had, got those important, areas aligned that you were mentioning at the start, Ruth, in terms of that preparation. But it is possible, isn't it, to be able
yes,
to
definitely. We had a few institutions last year feedback that they had quite an urgent need, so they just got on and did it all within 4 weeks. And then within hindsight, they'd like to have done a little bit more and a bit more planning. But sometimes, you know, in the world we all live in, you have to be agile, you have to be able to adapt and get things done. So it's in sort of a suboptimal way. But if you keep doing it year on year, then you can improve. And as Kylie mentioned, that as you repeat it, you get more familiar and you get better, and you can do it in richer ways the next time, so you can learn from your experience. And that's certainly what institutions that have done it year on year have said. But also part of the benefit of being part of this service is that we can give you lots of support in getting you off to a really good flying start. So there's an awful lot of support and guidance, and as I've said, there's people here to help if you can't find out quickly what you're looking for.
Quick question from Kat Husbands about analysing the free text. I think there's something in the guide. I didn't write that section on the analysis. I think there is something in there. I can get back to you about it as well, because there is software we can use, and there are simple free software you can use to analyse free text. But I'll have a look into that.
If anyone has got a particular query, because we didn't ask for emails when we signed up, if you are, so for Kat, if you are able to drop us an email, we can use, what's the best email, Mark? Digital Insights?
I would say go to help@gisc.ac.uk, and if you put digital insights in the title, it will come through to us. Just help@gisc.ac.uk and digital insights in the title. So a very quick question from Elizabeth again. Could you talk a little about the online student survey and how it differs from the standard? It's almost similar. There's just a few extra questions in there. That's all. I can't remember offhand what they are. Again, I can get back to you. There's a few extra ones.
I think what we were trying to do with that one as well was to ensure that, you know, a lot of cases, institutions are delivering online provision and provision on site. And what we were interested in looking at with those two question sets was to look at some of the parity of provision, because that's where we see the most differences coming through in the experience of a student studying online to the experience of a student on campus. So a lot of the questions we mapped to ensure that we could draw those comparisons, and then also included obviously some questions that were particularly nuanced to a student's online experience in terms of their use of and access to technology, their attitudes to sort of learning online, you know, any feelings of isolation. So there's quite a, you know, some sort of quite useful sort of nuanced questions that we've included in there based on our previous research underpinning this area.
Okay.
And just to point out, 100% online. So the question sets for HE or FE are suitable for ones that are doing blended learning approach. So as Sarah's mentioned, the online one is really targeted at students that don't come on campus at all.
So a question from Rod as well. Are there different versions for staff? Not at the moment. There's one single staff version.
But Ruth is about to just give a little glimpse in terms of what's coming up.
Okay. Let's move on.
Okay, thanks for that. So as we mentioned, we always want to make sure that the service is current to meet your needs. And so always looking to see where there are gaps in the service and how we could enhance not only the existing question set, but create new question sets. And so one area that a lot of institutions have asked for is a question set for professional service staff. So at the moment, the staff survey is for teaching staff. So it has questions about your teaching experience. And so institutions that want to get a holistic view from all their staff and students on the digital environment, they've asked to have a survey for professional services. And so that's what we're in the process of developing. So we'd be delighted if there's any institutions out there that would like to work with us in refining the questions that we've got. So we've got a straw man set of questions to work from. But if you would like to get involved in piloting that in the April to June, July time, please do drop us an email or put a note in the chat now, and we'll get back in touch with you. So that's the really big question set that we're looking to develop this year. We've also engaged with a few institutions that are looking at their T&E provision. And so we're running a discovery pilot with a few institutions to find out parity of experience between their home students and their offshore students. And again, if you're interested in taking part, please do get in touch. Then the very interesting, but maybe slightly more challenging development is around researchers and trying to find out what it is that the research staff and students think about their digital experience, and developing a question set for them. So again, if you're interested in working on that pilot, please do get in touch. I'm mindful of time, so I'll pass over to Mark, but just to reiterate, any other questions that you haven't had time to ask today, or you think about after the webinar, please do drop us a line at help@gisc.ac.uk, and that will get through to us. So thank you for your time today. Mark or Sarah, do you want to wrap up?
Yes, thank you. And I'll just say a final sort of couple of words really. To say, hopefully you've seen from this webinar that in terms of how you can maximise the use of the surveys as part of that wider engagement process, but also the fact that it is very much a collaborative partnership. This is something that we work very closely with you on, and provide that support, guidance and learning on that journey with you. The date for our next community of practice is on the 22nd of May in Birmingham. And please do, if you want to keep sort of up to date, please do join our community of practice list if you're not subscribed, because that will give you access. And also, please do follow the blog. You'll see that Mark does regular monthly updates in relation to news that's coming out from Insights, and that's applicable to those that are subscribed, but also those that wish to follow the development. So I hope that's sort of given you a little bit of an incentive to continue your engagement with Insights. Those that we're working with closely, fantastic. Those that aren't yet signed up, we hope this has persuaded you to think about the opportunity of working with us. We'd be delighted to work with you. Some further links, and as I say, we will send out an email to the list with all the recordings, the slides, and we'll be following up some of the queries that come in the chat window as well. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Ruth, and thank you to Mark for supporting us and for providing that valuable input as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.